Okay, when you're looking at animal rights, keep in mind everything you've learned about the image of God and that human beings have responsibilities to animals in the world around them. So that's part of being in God's image. Now, obviously, also keep in mind that in the Bible, Adam and Eve, the first humans, were created in a garden in which they had to name the animals. Now, naming the animals in the Old Testament did not mean something like going along and saying, well, I'm going to call you a goat and I'm going to call you a sheep. That's not what naming somebody meant in the Old Testament times. Giving someone a name was a deeply personal thing. It was about getting to know that person and to know them so intimately that you could come up with a name that summed them up as to who they were. So, for example, Jacob in the Bible, who's a very cunning character, is called a twister. Jacob means twister. It means that his parents knew him and gave a name that was appropriate to him. So when humans are told to name the animals, it means get to know them, be in a relationship with them, understand the animals so well that you can give them a name that shows you understand them. Also remember that humans are put in a garden which they are told to care for. And also remember that in the Bible, when the Bible looks to the future of the world and when God will come down and remake the new heavens and the new earth, it talks about a time when the wolf will live with the lamb and the leopard will lie down with the goat and the calf and the lion and the young child will be together and the little child will lead them. And cows will lie down with the bear, and their young will lie down together. And the infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child put his hand into the viper's nest. And they will neither harm nor destroy on all of my holy mountain, for the earth will be as full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And the idea is that when God and humans are right with each other, humans and animals will live at peace with each other, and that humans will not be carelessly killing and harming the animals of the world. And that's a state of future peace that the Bible talks about. That's the way the world should be. So humans and animals are not at peace with each other in Christianity. We over-farm animals, we're cruel to animals, we abuse animals because we're greedy and we're power-hungry and we're careless, and sin leads to a state at which animals are not treated well by us. Christians should have kinder attitudes towards animals because we were created to be kind with the animals, and because Jesus tells us to take care of the weak and the helpless. And Jesus said that God knows even if a sparrow falls out of the air. So God has an intimate care of his creation, which we should attempt to repeat. But that leads us into areas like, for example, animal experimentation. Is it okay for humans to experiment on animals if it's going to save lives? Now, on the one hand, only humans are in God's image. So a human life is worth more than an animal life. And there seems to be something dehumanizing to say, well, a human and a dog are of equal importance. That doesn't seem to make us think of animals as higher. It seems to make us think of humans as lower. It doesn't mean that, if I say that a gorilla should have the same rights as a human being, or a chimp should have the same rights as a human being, or a dolphin should have the same rights as a human being, that doesn't seem to give animals more rights. What it seems to do is give humans less rights. Quite often those arguments are used, for example, to justify abortion or infanticide, the killing of a newborn child. And somebody says, well, we kill animals, and quite often those animals are as intelligent as some human beings. So simply saying that treating an animal as if it will have human rights will not make the world necessarily a better place. It can actually make the world a worse place. In Christianity, definitely humans and only humans have an absolute right to life because they're in God's image. Animals are not in God's image. We have a responsibility towards them, but they are not given, each individual animal is not given a right to life. So should we allow animal testing? That sometimes includes things like vivisection, which means, basically dissecting an animal to see how it works. Well, some people say that human life is a greater value than animal life. Millions of animals are killed every year for food. So if anything, medical research is more worthy than killing animals to eat them. Few animals feel any pain in medical research because they're killed before they have a chance to suffer. And compare that to how animals live in the natural world. Animals in the natural world can have quite brutal and short lives. There are predators out there which enjoy hunting. But they will hunt down deer and all sorts of animals and kill them not as quickly as a human will kill an animal that's going to be experimented on. If you've ever seen a cat play with a mouse, you get the idea of how nasty the world can seem to a human when you look at the animal world. Great white sharks, for example, will sometimes bite the heads of seals just for practice. An animal has to have a very finely tuned nervous system to hunt, and so therefore they effectively practice, and that can seem quite brutal to us. Now, if we're going to stop animal testing because it's cruel, should we be intervening in the natural world to stop all the cruelty that happens out there? Does that follow? Or is it possible that animals don't experience the world the way we do? That's something we'll return to in a moment. Those who are against animal testing say, well, look, a lot of these deaths are unnecessary because we can use computer models now to work out how animals work, and we don't need animal testing. Animal testing is cheaper than the sort of models we could use using computer simulations. They have also said that strict controls have not prevented researchers from abusing animals, and also that animals, when they're locked up, can suffer tremendous stress. Now, a big question here is, what is it like to be an animal? That's really not clear. We can't read an animal's mind. And sometimes it can be cruel to treat animals as if they're people. To treat an animal as if it's a human can actually be cruel. So somebody who continually feeds a dog because the dog is begging can feed the dog the wrong type of food and do it harm, can do it injury. That's a fairly normal example. But also we forget that animals are quite often designed to live in rough environments and quite often enjoy those environments. And somehow to protect the animal from that environment can be a little bit cruel. So to give you an example there, at SeaWorld keep killer whales in large pools which are well filtrated, and they're given plenty of nutrients, and they're given all sorts of things that they would never get in the sea. It's almost like a hotel for killer whales is the way SeaWorld would be described, the way they treat their killer whales. And they say that out there in the sea, killer whales live in a very nasty environment, which is really brutal, where they're always competing for food, where they have to hunt their food down, where they have to attack sea lions, which will bite back, where they'll attack all sorts of prey, which can fight them. Our killer whales have a much nicer life at SeaWorld. Yet there's no denying the fact that animals in SeaWorld, or rather killer whales in SeaWorld, suffer more stress and disease than animals in the wild. And very, very narrow, not a lot, but there is a slightly shorter life expectancy for a killer whale at SeaWorld than there would be out in the wild. In other words, killer whales actually do slightly better in the wild than they do in SeaWorld, where there are vets who are employed to keep those animals alive because they're multi-million-pound investments. Why is that? Well, because killer whales aren't people. You and I might like the idea of living in a place which is set up entirely for our comfort, but we're not designed to live in a brutal environment. Killer whales are. It might be horrifying for us to go out and live in the deep, dark, cold sea, but killer whales are designed to live there and actually seem to enjoy it, and enjoy the struggle and enjoy the fight. And so therefore, thinking about animals as if they're little people can actually be a bit cruel. We're not experiencing the world that they experience as they experience it. Here's another example. Some people argue that fishing is cruel because fish feel pain. Well, fish certainly do seem to have a pain response, but they also can measure for stress in animals, basically how upset you are. And here's the interesting thing. An animal which has a hook in its mouth, a fish which has a hook in its mouth, will flap about and be stressed, but will very, very quickly calm down when it's released. It doesn't know permanent harm in terms of stress. But if you put the same fish into water which is polluted, it will get very stressed for a long time, even after it's taken out. Pain matters less to it than the environment it's in. Polluted water is a terrible thing for it. Pollution doesn't bother us so much. Pain matters to us a great deal. But fish have very, very short-term memories and forget things very, very quickly. So what exactly an animal is experiencing is a difficult thing for us to know. And so therefore it's very difficult for us to imagine and to know exactly what an animal's going through. And so what you can do then is you can argue one of two ways. You can say, well, I don't know what an animal's going through, therefore I'm going to do everything I can to stay out of its way and not to take it into laboratories. Or people who work in laboratories can say, well, listen, don't tell me what my mice are experiencing before I kill them. You're not a mouse. We don't know what goes through a mouse's mind. This animal's well looked after, well fed and everything else. It's difficult to know what's going on in an animal's mind, and therefore can be a wee bit difficult at times to judge exactly what animal cruelty is. Something that needs to be kept in mind, though, is that people who indulge in animal cruelty very often go on to harm human beings because they are unnecessarily harming and hurting and causing pain. And people who do that for no reason very often find it easier then to go on to cause humans harm and hurt and pain. So the whole animal experimentation, the debate there is over, well, is it okay to kill and hurt an animal because it will be hurt and it will feel pain and it will go through some displeasure? Is it okay to harm and hurt an animal to save human lives when animals in the wild are hunted and experience stress, but they seem happier in those environments quite often in environments where we take them away from that? So that's one that you can debate, you can come to your own